So before we get into this week's video, what I want to do is just tell you what actually happened. This last week I went out and shot some images, and at the time I thought they were really quite promising, and then I got them back to the studio and got them on the computer, and they just didn't work at all, either of them. So what I want to do with this video is basically I'm going to roll the footage from the actual day's shooting, and then when I get to the images I want to stop and go over with you why they didn't work and what I could have done to improve them. Let's roll the footage now. Well, hello guys, I hope you're doing well. So I've found this scene, and it's a woodland I've been wanting to come to for quite some time now, and there's lots of sort of coppice, and it's ancient woodland basically. And I've looked at it from far away for quite a while and thought it might have some potential. So I've come to it today, and there's absolutely loads all around. I'm seeing shots. The problem is getting them. So I'm just setting up for my first shot here, and it's on this, it's basically a fallen tree, and it's fallen forwards, and you've got lots of new growth coming out of the actual stump. I'll show you it now. But the lovely thing about it, it's got lovely sort of mossy trunks at the bottom, and they kind of almost spread out from the bottom right across the bottom of the frame. So I'm just trying to work it so that I'm getting most of that in the bottom of the shot, and then leading up to the lighter branches in the upper part of the frame. But I think it's got potential, but I think it might be a case of just moving round it just to see which works best. And again, try landscape orientation first, and then maybe later on I'll try a portrait shot. So what I've actually done is I've swapped onto my, believe it or not, my kit lens that I use, which is the 28-70. And I wanted to use that because I don't want the shot so wide as to take in so much of the sky. So I've swapped onto that lens now, and it seems to be working a little better for me. Now what initially drew me to this shot is basically the contrast between the lighter shade in the upper branches and the darker green colour on the bottom. And it's also, because we're kind of almost in a clearing above us here, it's getting some nice ambient light cast on the actual mosses. So that sort of contrast in the shot's working really, really well. So this is actually ideal conditions for us today, because it's totally flat calm. There's barely a breath of wind, and it's flat light, and it's just like a giant softbox above us today. And it's really handy because of this opening above us, and I'm just getting this ambient light reflected on these limbs of this tree. Totally perfect. So we're not getting any sort of highlights or parts that are blown out. It's all kind of nice and even right across the frame here. So if this shot's turned out okay, I'll pop it up now. So as you can see from this first image, it's not really working at all. And the reason for it is, I think, is just that it's too busy, there's too much going on. And I was having a real hard time trying to work out an angle that actually captured it how I wanted it. I loved the contrast between the white of the top end of the branches and the green moss, but no matter which way I kind of worked it, it just wasn't working. Visually it was good to look at, but as an image it just wasn't working for me. and I think maybe at this point I probably just should have moved on and found something else. So I've just had a wander around and found this other scene now, and basically we've got a fallen tree, and it's beautiful because it's covered in like a lovely sphagnum moss, and there's also a bit that kind of looks through, and it's kind of almost like an eye. When you look through it from one side, you can see right through into the other trees behind. So I'm just trying to frame it up and make it work. I'm shooting in a landscape orientation, and what I'm having to do, because my lens is basically not even a foot away from this bottom lower limb here, I'm actually focus stacking it. And up to press, I think I've had to take about 8 shots at all parts of the frame to try and keep it sharp. And it's because I'm right up on it, and it's the only way to make the actual image work. But I think there's definitely something there. And if it comes out, I'll pop it up now. Now again, I felt this image had real potential when I first found it, and I loved all the textures in the logs and in the moss itself. The problem I was having though is the more I looked at it as an image, it was too messy, and it was because of the actual eye in the log itself, and because you're looking through onto more trees and branches in the background, I think it overcomplicates the image and it looks too messy. I think probably what I should have done, and what probably would have made for a better image, is if I'd gone to the other side of the logs and still used the eye shape in the log, but shot back through it the other direction and onto the actual moss in the foreground. I think that would have been a far simpler image, and it would have worked a whole lot better. Now I think it's really important to realise when something hasn't worked, and not be afraid to kind of learn from your mistakes. When you look back at the images and they haven't worked, at least you can pick apart why it didn't work, and then the next time you go out you can put it into practice and hopefully get a better image from it. So this last image that I'm going to pop up is a much simpler image that I took away from the day, and it's using the same composition as the last one, but obviously just using the moss in the foreground and the logs at the back to create a much simpler image, and I think it works better than any of the previous two. But I'd be really interested to hear from you guys what you think. Please leave any comments down in the comments section below.